What's up everybody, Chris coming to you from Salty Island, and it's been a hot minute since I've posted any videos on this channel, but GW has finally shown off the thing that I've personally been waiting for the last quarter essentially, and that is the Arks of Omen. Not just necessarily the competitive side, but more the narrative side with the boarding action gameplay and a little bit of an idea about what's going on both in the story as well as how the games are going to be playing. And I'm super hyped up for this. I saw this morning and I had to run into work, but I'm here at lunch right now and I wanted to record this real fast and give my thoughts for everyone because like I said, have been waiting for this for quite a long time, and I'm just going to throw it out there right at the start. I really like the direction that a lot of this is going. And there may be implications. I ain't going to dive into whether or not I think this has anything to do with 10th edition, but I do want to talk a little bit about some of the changes that they're doing for this particular mode. The big thing that they said is you're basically going to be playing 40k Combat Patrol. And if you followed this channel for any length of time, you will see that we love Combat Patrol. We love small games that are fast to play, where each model makes a difference. You don't get a lot of redundancy on it, and you just kind of throw models in, you throw some dice, you have a good time. If the game goes sideways, you just play another game after. Games probably will last anywhere from a half an hour to maybe 1 hour if you're kind of new to the game and playing a little slow. If you're pretty well versed in the game, we've found that games at 500 points tend to last about 3 turns, maybe 4, and like I said, about a half an hour to an hour depending upon the army, and you can be completely done with the game and moving on to the next one if you want. So let's take a look at some of the previews from GW, and I'll give you my quick thoughts on it. The first one is this note here you can see on the screen. Walls are actual walls. I mean, it's a boarding action. You're in a ship. The walls go to the ceiling, and you can't really go over them. So you can't jump over them, you can't shoot over them, and in particular, psychic powers and auras also don't go through the walls. I think this is pretty cool. I think it makes the whole layout of the board kind of that Zone Mortalis style. It also gives you you have to think about the positioning of each of your models, whether things are in range. It's just something new for players to think about. Is it good? Is it bad? Neither. It's just but it will affect the way that you play the game. So that's a quick summary. As you can see on the screen here, if you're model A, you do not get to measure directly through the wall. You must go around, so 2 inches, 1 inch wall, 2 inches. This works for both friendly and enemy. So if model A was a captain and model B was a friendly model, the aura effect also is a 5-inch range. Same thing with the Psyker. Psyker power that doesn't require line of sight. It is not directly through the wall. Got to go around the corner. It's neither here nor there, but it is going to change the way you play, and I think that's interesting. The second one here, this one's more actually interesting to me, is that as you can see, there's these doors, and there's all different kinds of doors, by the way. The ones that they're displaying here are these little round doors that open up, but there's other types of doors too. If you have Necromunda, you've got 2-inch vertical sliding walls. If you've got the old Zone Mortalis, you've got entire big doors that are maybe 1 inch or 2 inches that can open and close. There's a bunch of other different types of terrain, both homebrew and third party, all different styles of doors. The important thing to note though is when a door is closed, it basically counts as a solid wall. And then when the door is open, you can then measure, same way, all the way up through around to the model. And the doors will take an action to open and close, which actually leads to a lot of really interesting tactical decisions, because you could be standing next to a closed door and someone could pop that door open, and all of a sudden what was previously, completely out of range of something, you're now right next to another model. Or someone could do it the opposite, where you've got a captain on one side and a squad on the other side of the door, and someone runs up and shuts the door, and your squad loses access to the aura of the captain because now there's a closed door between them. So that just the fact that there's this new type of interaction, I think is really cool. It's something to think about. It's something interesting. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this kind of plays out more. Obviously, there's a ton of questions. This is not by any means the full definitive rules. These are the actual rules, but there might be more wording, more clarification in the actual book itself. Probably some FAQs are going to be needed because you know how GW is when it's writing rules. They're not Wizards of the Coast, let's put it that way, when it comes to being very clear and explicit on how the interactions of their rules work. But as a start, I think this is a great start. This is really cool. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how this plays out. And we've also got a table built. We haven't been just idle. We've been building a table specifically for Arks of Omen. We'll be showing that off pretty soon. All right, this next one is going to be a big one. This one is going to be a big one that does have a actual mechanical difference. And in this case, model A is the Space Marine. These two in the middle, models B and C, this is one unit. And D and E, let's pretend this is another unit. Just for example's sake, I know it's kind of a weird example, but let's just pretend, for example, B and C is one unit, D and E is another unit. Model A cannot shoot models D and E because models block line of sight both ways. So models D and E cannot shoot model A. Even your friendly models now block line of sight. I am going to assume that by a rules as written technicality, if there was a gap between B and C, because the rule does say that you draw a straight line and it does not cross over a base, that it's legit. So if you leave a gap between B and C, then models they can shoot through the gap. If you make them touch, like in this picture, no gap, no shooting through it. Now, lots of clarifications that I've seen online and lots of things that people are inquiring about. For example, do models in the same unit block line of sight? Like, do models D and E, does it block their own line of sight? Or does models in the same unit not block line of sight? Vice versa, and things like that. Again, not definitive. There's probably more clarification in the actual rules. This is just an example. So try not to freak out. Definitely don't freak out. It's going to be what it is. Like, it is a different style of gameplay. But for the general assumption here is models from other units block line of sight, both friendly and enemy, which is going to be really big for the Arks of Omen type. For example, if you have a unit of like Tyranid Guard, big chunky Tyranid Guard, you line them up side by side down the width of a hallway, you put a bunch of little like tiny pointy guys on behind them, and now the big guys are effectively body blocking for all the squishy little guys that want to get up into combat. Terminators is another one that I can think of. Or expendable cultists, like if you're playing Death Guard, you just got a blob of Poxwalkers behind some much more juicy targets of Death Guard. You got to chew through the Poxwalkers unless you reposition, you move around the hallways, find an open door, whatever. But the point being is that all of these rules so far definitely put a heavier emphasis on the positioning of each individual model. And I think that's good, especially at a smaller point game. At 2,000 points, that's a lot of models you got to keep track of. At 500 points, it's not that many models. My Thousand Sun list, for example, has 11 models, 5 rubrics, 5 terminators, and a sorcerer. Even probably the biggest army that I have at 500, which is IG, probably no more than 20 models. It's a bunch of guardsmen, a command squad, and a special weapons team, right? And so like even at these larger, more horde type armies, you're not going to really have as big of an issue. The orc army I think that we're going to be running that one actually has a lot. Got like 30 boys, some ludas, some knobs, boss. Even that one is still less than 40 models though. No, 41 models. It's 41 models for the orc army. That's probably the biggest army that we have prepared for Arks of Omen. But still, that's orcs, right? You're gonna mow through them, kill them fast, but that's part of what it is you got a wall of orcs coming through you, filling up a hallway. You have to figure out how to deal with that. And I think that's really interesting. And it's pretty, a new way to think about the game and think about the strategy. All right, this one here, this one. I have a lot of questions about this next one. Again, I'm just going to wait till I see the full rules and then probably the next FAQ after it. And that is Model A is shooting the gun. Model A can see Model D. From a point on the Model A, it sees the entire base, the whole width of the base, no cover. Makes sense. Model A cannot see any of the base of Model B. Completely blocked line of sight, no shooting. Makes sense. Model C is where it gets weird, is that a point of Model A can see part of the base of Model C. So if any of Model C is obscured from Model A, that's any point on Model A, you just pick the most optimal one. If it's still completely blocked by a wall, or Model C is partially blocked, it gets cover. Now the question I have, obviously, is if these three models are in the same unit, do you have to shoot Model D first? Can you just take the cover saves on Model C and ignore Model D? How does this work? If you deal 3 wounds, for example, on Model D, does it spill over to Model B, who can't be shot at all? We can probably use some logic, right? Gotta take the saves on Model D first, then Model C. Any other shots are wasted on B. That's assumption of like how I would do it. But again, I don't write the rules how GW does, and if anyone's played GW games for a while, you know that GW doesn't always think the way that we think. So we're going to have to wait and see, but this is how the new cover works. Cover, again, just emphasizing that position per model is going to be a very big part of the game. And again, it's not going to be that big of a deal because at a small 500-point game, you can focus on the position of each individual model. Kind of like Kill Team. It's very Kill Team-esque, except you're activating things and you have, squad coherency on that as well. So it's kind of a hybrid. I love Kill Team. I think Kill Team's a great game. I really enjoy playing it. I wish we had put more of it on the YouTube channel. Maybe we'll do more of it next year, but Kill Team, every time I've played it, super fun. And this looks to be carrying over a lot of those rules. I'm very excited. I do like that they have the corn. I like that they're showing the alternate corn list that has both the basically the all demon. So it's got the possess, the 8-bound, as well as corn bloodletters. Very cool. I like it. I've already got some bloodletters. I'm absolutely going to be picking up the new World Eaters box because I didn't realize that I needed World Eaters in my life, but apparently I did. That's just how life's going to be. So I like that they're showing the alternate version of the World Eaters list. And it's got Karn in it. Apparently I should pick up Karn too. I don't know if Karn will be in the box yet though. So I'm going to hold off until I see the contents of the box before I run out and get Karn by myself. All right. Now this last one here, this is the one that I am both apprehensive and very excited about. And that is all the stratagems in all the codexes are going right out the window. And this kind of lines up with some of the talk of 10th edition in that, things are going to be different. They're going to reduce the amount of stratagems. Probably a lot of them will be going away. And this one even implies that one of them is going out of a stratagem back to being a core rule, which we'll get to in a second. But at the start of the boarding actions of Arks of Omen, you have only the basic stratagems again. Command reroll, counter-offensive, and insane bravery. That's reroll 1 dice. The counter-offensive is the one that lets you attack immediately out of turn after your opponent gets their first attack in close combat. And then insane bravery is you auto-pass the morale check. That's it. All the other stratagems are not going to be in effect. They are going to release new stratagems for every faction and some sub-factions, they say. But it does say starting in Arks of Omen Angron. The thing I want to let you know is they already showed the books. They showed the first 3 books. Arks of Omen Angron is the 3rd book. It's Abaddon, Vashtor, then Angron. So we're going to have to be waiting kind of a while, probably at least 3 months, before we get Arks of Omen Angron. So if we get Abaddon in January, I'm going to assume mid to late January, then February, March. We're not going to get any stratagems till March. So what do I think of stratagems? I mean, I definitely think the stratagems are the biggest source of bloat in the game right now. So I'm not mad that they took all those stratagems out. Do I like the flavor that stratagems bring? Sometimes. Some people definitely have better stratagems than others. Some people definitely have a lot of useless stratagems. And people just like their combos. I'm a big combo player. I love combos. So I can understand why people might be apprehensive about losing all their fancy stratagems. But I do like the reduction of bloat on that. And I do think that they've already hinted that that's the direction that 10th edition is going. So this might be a little bit of a flavor, maybe getting people used to the idea. They did give some samples though, which are obviously very flavorful. IG got one, heads down. Basically, unit hits the ground, they can shoot from the prone position, so a unit behind can shoot over them. They don't block line of sight for a unit behind them. I'm assuming that works both ways, where the enemy can also shoot over that unit. But it does specify in your shooting phase. So I guess the enemy won't be shooting back, unless someone has some kind of trick way to get a shooting round off. But other than that, this is in your shooting phase. One core unit hits the ground, they can fire from the prone position. Friendlies can shoot over them. Awesome. Very cool. 1 CP. Orcs got a cool one, pile through. This is cool because it interacts with the hatches rule. If a hatch opens up and suddenly the orc army is now within engagement range of one or more enemy units, they count as having made a charge that turn. Awesome if like a unit's got its back to a wall, like a back to a door. Maybe not necessarily the tiny hatch, but like if you have the Zone Mortalis hatch, the big 2-inch wide one, someone hits that button and it slides up, and suddenly this big wall of orcs is on you. Hit pile through, you get the charge bonuses on that, and you're now engaged in combat. Which actually is a really interesting thing that it talks about, that you're automatically in engagement range, implying that even without this stratagem, if a door suddenly opens, you might be automatically pulled into engagement range, kind of taking away that requirement to be a minimum number of inches away from an enemy unit because of the door interaction. So very cool. Looking forward to seeing that. I'd love to see more stratagems. So far, these seem really flavorful. I hope it's not going to be 1,000 stratagems, because each army having 30 stratagems, not necessary. Each army having maybe like 5 to 10 actually good stratagems, I'm down for it. And that's pretty much the end of the article itself. But there's a couple of things that are kind of key if you didn't read all the way through the bottom. And the big one I want to hit here is this one. Enhancements like relics and warlord traits are also getting reset with boarding action specific enhancements on the way for everyone. This one's a bit rough. We'll see. Like, for example, I didn't know that relics and warlord traits needed a reset, but maybe, I don't know. I do know that there are some armies that have way better relics. Some armies have way better warlord traits. Some armies just have like one of each that's worthwhile, whereas others are basically, there's no shortage of cool combinations you can do. So maybe this is, again, a little glimpse at 10th. I don't know, but they are definitely going to be redoing this. Kind of also seems to be in line with the rumors dropped for the World Eaters book. Again, the big one was that there's only 8 stratagems for the World Eaters, and then 8 completely different stratagems for basically the Khorne Bloodborne sub-faction of the World Eaters, which is the demon half of it. It's not 8 in addition, it is 8 completely replacing. There are less relics, less warlord traits. I am hoping that means that they just took the crappy, worthless ones that no one ever takes, hucked them out the window, only kept the good ones. But again, if you've been a GW fan for any length of time, you can't 100% trust that. It's the hopes and dreams, but yet to be proven. So we'll see on this one. is that relics and warlord traits also getting the big reset. And that's the current preview. I currently overall, as you can tell by the fact that I had to make this video in the middle of the day, really hyped up. I'm really excited. I like what I'm seeing so far, and I've been waiting for a narrative focused anything from ninth edition. It's been very tournament focused, and I've been a tournament player in the past. I got nothing but love for the tournament scene. Obviously, we've gotten a lot of rebalancing because, I mean, as much as people say, yeah, I've played Eldar all my life and they've never been bad and they've never gotten a nerf before, I've also played Thousand Suns all my life, and some editions it's just been the struggle, and I've just been sad. And I want to play Thousand Suns, and I want to love my Thousand Suns. They're my first true love army. I played them back in third, and sometimes they suck. And getting no update for years on end and just having a shitty army, your favorite army be suck, is just a struggle. So, as much as I complain about the fluidity of the current edition of the game, I also appreciate that you can play everything and that everything is usable. Like even when Thousand Suns, I played it in 8th edition. I wanted to play Rubric Marines and Terminators, and I just played Zangor Bomb because that's really all it was. And I stuck in Rubric Marines and Terminators out of love, but I still ran Zangor Bomb, and now I can play my Rubric Marines. And Zangors suck, but maybe they won't suck forever. But at least like I can play my Rubric Marines and my Terminators, and it's nice. It is nice. So there's double sided on it, right? It's not all one sided. It's not all bad. It's not all good. It's just going to be a new version of the game. So I'm very excited for that one. The last thing that I want to just leave everyone with before, if you've watched the video this far, is I want everyone to remember that this is a narrative game, right? It may not be the most balanced. It may be taking away the stratagems, the relics, the warlord traits, whatever. But remember that the reason I think that this is really important, that GW is doing a narrative-focused event, is because it is literally in the rules that with narrative play, you can just talk to your opponent and just have a conversation and make adjustments to the rules as you need. For example, like if me and Salty Shy are playing a game and they take away my favorite warlord trait from the core book, and they just give me other warlord traits that maybe they're good, maybe they're bad, whatever. But if just my favorite warlord trait is gone, I can talk to Salty Shy and be like, yo, do you mind if I just use this warlord trait out of the core book? It's the one that's for my Cult of Time. I'm down with it. I love the narrative of it. And Salty Shy is like, yeah, that's cool. I don't mind. Can I use this relic that this is my favorite relic. I did a conversion on my model for this relic, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. You can talk to your opponent, and I understand that match play is fantastic for pickup games, right? You go to your local hobby shop, you see somebody that you hangs out at the shop. You each got an army. You point at each other. You're like, you down for a game, and you don't have to have a big long conversation. You're just like, yeah, match play, 2K. You both know what you're doing. You both know the rules. You both know the expectation. You both know what kind of, secondaries and all that good stuff. You just know. You don't have to have a conversation. And that's fantastic for pickup games. And I do appreciate that that's, I think, one of the biggest benefits of match play. But on the other hand, if you play with your friends that you have a local gaming group, you have people that you see a lot at the shop that you talk to that person, you can have a conversation. And that's why it's important that GW support narrative play, because you can talk to people. You can just be cool with people, and you can agree on how you want to play 40K. You can adjust rules if you don't like them. If you want to play Arks of Omen with a Crusade army, if you want to play Arks of Omen and use all of the stratagems in your core book, if you want to use a sub army that was banned in January because it went away from, GW basically invalidated it in the match play rules, but you love that sub faction. You want to use all the fancy Mars or all the fancy Metallica for Admech, whatever. narrative play, just talk to your opponent. You know, if your opponent's not cool with it, if he's like, oh man, that seems way more powerful than the army I brought, fine, just talk to your opponent, right? It's 500 points. You guys can have a conversation. If you play 40k, you understand when you are looking at your opponent's army and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna table that in like 2 turns. That's not a fun game, right? This is not about just stomping your opponent. Narrative is about just having a good time with your opponent, playing some fun games, having some cool interactions on the table, talk to people. It's narrative. You can play it however you want to play it. And I hope that people remember that when they see the restrictions and the changes in this is if you're not down with it, it's okay. Just find somebody who wants to play the way you want to play a game, have fun, and let's all look forward to having some new games, some new models on in a new year. So thank you very much for everyone checking this video out. Rambled on a little bit longer than I intended, but as you can tell, I'm really excited for this, and I'll be covering more of these as they come up. I'm really hoping that we get more sooner than later. But thank you everyone for your time. Keep an eye on the channel. We appreciate any support. I appreciate everyone's support in 2022, by the way. Thank you everyone for hanging in there. I know content's been light at the end of this year. Took a bit of a 40k break just because I got a little burned out, but Arks of Omen has definitely got me back on the hype train. So you'll be seeing a lot more content soon. Thank you everyone for your time, and peace out.